This tale ended quite dramatically last time. We had failed to prevent the gift being taken by the guards, delivered to a man in white armour named Villain, who, I must say, isn't very nice. He did say he never takes his white armour off. That doesn't surprise me. I bet it's filthy inside. Anyway, he sailed off somewhere in his little boat. Seth, after savagely eviscerating several guards, joined myself and Mia on another part of the dock, the mast of another ship blazing brightly behind us thanks to a well-aimed firebolt from Mia, the two of us holding a severed head of a guard which we had just pulled from the water. A biscuit, firmly wedged into one eyeball. Somewhere in the depths, Mia's friend, who I discovered is called Sham. I feel a little guilty. It was my thorn whip that landed him in the ocean, though to be fair, it does seem he is a vicious killer. It seems everybody is. I don't know what's happened to Bustin, but he's probably murdered some people too. I immediately backed away from both Seth and Mia, leaving her holding the severed head. Seth quickly dipped what parts of himself he could into the ocean to wash away the blood, cleaning his short swords. He glanced at Mia, then walked carefully towards me. He asked if I was hurt, and I told him that yes, I was extremely hurt. I thought he was my friend and he'd just viciously murdered people. Then I realised he meant physically and told him no. Whilst we were talking, we could see the High Wizard approaching along with a group of townsfolk, and a figure in a guard's uniform with a blank expression on their face. Seth asked me if he had any blood on him. The memory of him covered in it was too powerful, and all I could see, so without looking I reached out and cast light on his nose, causing it to glow, in the hope it would distract from any remaining blood. The High Wizard approached and asked if we were okay. Seth told him that the gift was taken away on a boat and gave the details of what had occurred. I threw in that it was a man called Villain. The figure in red moved forward and asked if we were okay, and if we'd seen the Lady of Hightower. I asked if he meant the beautiful elven woman with the golden eyes, golden skin and flowing hair. He gathered that I meant Mia and moved in an odd grinding motion towards her on the dock. The wizard asked if we managed to capture anyone. I told him that they were all dead, but technically they were unable to run away, so that did kind of count as capturing. I also mentioned the stone Mia had thrown into the fray. He told us how to work it and to go and see the golem, called Golem. Seth asked who was in charge of the guards and was told it was a man called Pogrom. Golem was, by now, over next to Mia. He bent forward slightly with a creak, and the fiery hole on the top of his head began to spin like a vortex, sucking in all the flames from the mast of the ship burning furiously behind her, extinguishing them in a puff of smoke. He then began a slow incantation, his hand held out at 90 degrees. I hurried over to him and addressed him. His head slowly turned towards me, almost like an owl, rotating whilst his body remained still. I told him what had become of the fish boy. He said he would be fine as he could breathe underwater as long as his neck wasn't damaged. Sheepishly, I confessed that his neck may have gotten a little hurt by my rescue attempt. He asked if I meant Sham, but I didn't know the name. I guess that was probably it. I mean, I've never seen anyone like him before, so I guess there can't be many within Highport. Although, what may be in the High Tower, I have no idea. Golem said he would rescue Sham. He finished the incantation, and Mia, along with the severed head, vanished. Golem then slowly began to tip sideways, telling Seth and I that if he wasn't back in 10 minutes, he was probably dead. He hit the water and sank like a stone. Seth went to investigate some of the bodies whilst I stood on the sidelines, keeping an eye on the water to see if Golem emerged at any point. I could see Seth in discussion with the High Wizard. It turns out that the men Seth had dispatched were not, in fact, guards. The High Wizard dispelled some sort of magic, revealing that they were in white uniforms. They had killed the town guards, leaving only one alive, and taken their places. The living guard was in the medical bay, having been found in a room in the inn with the bodies of the less fortunate guards. White seems to be a colour of ill omen in Hairun. After confirming with Seth that my dress was definitely cream and not at all white, we decided to head back into the town to speak with the mayor, get some supplies, question the guard who'd survived the attack, and then try to find Bustin. As we were planning this, Mia suddenly apparated beside the High Wizard, having been given the all-clear by the medical team. The severed head, which she was still holding, now had a plaster over the damaged eye. The High Wizard returned her stone to her and explained that she had to stamp on it 3 times, plant it, water it, and then it would transform into a golem and help with whatever task was required. He was under the impression that this was common knowledge to the wizards, but from Mia's expression, I don't think his staff are as efficient as he believes. The High Wizard asked if there was anything we needed. I told him what Golem had done, and he rushed off in a panic. I explained to Mia what had happened to Sham. She was reluctant to leave, but knowing that both Golem and the High Wizard were going after him, and that he could probably breathe underwater, she agreed that we should head back into town, finally leaving the severed head glowing, thanks to my light cantrip, amongst the carnage. We headed off, hearing cries of, "Golem! Golem!" coming from the direction of the water. This was the first time Highport had been attacked in living memory, and there were signs of panic, but no other destruction or damage. We hadn't been walking for long when we saw a short, skinny figure in clothes that were far too big and far too purple, including a coat with a fur collar. Everyone seemed to be trying to talk to him. Seth could tell that he was most likely the mayor, though he was certain the man should have been much wider than the lanky man holding all the attention. Seth said he was going to speak to the mayor, then we should get some armour so we'd be better prepared to face whatever we needed to. Mia didn't feel she needed armour. After all, she had her books. She held up Spells for Dummies as proof. Whilst they were having this exchange, I went up to the mayor and stood directly in front of him. He was 5'4" and I'm 6 foot, so he had to step back to see my face. I told him we, and I indicated my 2 companions, needed to talk to him about the events of the day and we should go somewhere a little more private. He quickly led the 3 of us into a hall and ushered us to sit at a table. He seemed very impressed by the fact that Mia was a wizard from Hightower, and he said he'd send aid to help Sham. I asked about weapons and armour, and he said we could borrow some items from his armoury since we had done such a favour for the town. He also agreed to let us speak to the recovering guard, currently being treated in the infirmary in the same building. I asked if he could send someone to extinguish the hat of the lady who had been set on fire. He told us that she had only recently passed. She had passed through this room and then passed through the back door. It turns out she was his daughter. I'd seen who'd set her alight and convinced him it was one of the traitors who'd posed as a guard. He was overcome upon learning that Seth had dealt his own special brand of justice and offered him the greatest gift he could give, his daughter's hand in marriage. Seth, nonplussed, said that was fine, once he dealt with the pressing issue of the stolen gift. The mayor then sashayed out to his adoring fans. We were guided to another room, a curtain around the bed and the unmistakable smell indicating that this was the infirmary. Behind the curtain we could make out the silhouette of someone bending over and the snap of surgical gloves. I went straight over and pulled the curtain aside. I'm used to helping my mother with her healing, so I thought I might be able to help. A 6'6" man was lying on a bed, topless, being tended to. I suppose he was quite good looking, about 22. His name was Dave, and he appeared to have an injury to his chest, which was covered by some rather bloody bandages. The doctor agreed to let us have a moment with him. Seth healed him, then, tired from using such magic, stepped out, leaving Mia and I with Dave. I raided the top drawer on the left where the doctor had said the drugs were. I got 6 big-ass pills, which I gathered was some kind of tranquilizer. Then I questioned Dave. He informed us that he had a theory that the Order of the Dawn had infiltrated the guards, and they were likely after the gift. They were a cult obsessed with the Guardians. Mia had also heard of the group before, but she knew that the High Wizard was of the Dawn, and she had always assumed they were affiliated with him. Dave was quite out of it on the medication and just wanted to sleep, so I cast light on his left knee before we were shooed out by the doctor. We were told we could speak with Dave again in the morning. I dragged Mia quickly from the room before the doctor could discover the missing pills. As we emerged, we saw Seth sitting in the main hall. He was approached by the mayor, taking a quick moment away from his adoring public. He asked if Seth could do a job for him. He wanted a little monkey in a hat which had escaped, and hoped Seth could bring him back. Apparently said monkey was some kind of family heirloom passed down through the generations. The mayor was concerned that he may have wandered off in a direction which was known to have goblins and big, hairy creatures. It was quite dangerous. Seth agreed to add it to the list, provided we could spend the night here and make use of the facilities. The mayor happily agreed, giving Seth 4 keys before flouncing back outside. Mia and I rejoined Seth, who was looking at the keys. 1 huge iron key to the armory, 1 fancy key, and 2 ordinary keys which he'd been informed were for bedrooms. Mia decided to go to locate her bedroom while Seth and I headed for the armory. Seth gave the fancy key to Mia and one of the plainer ones to me. Mia's room was much more basic than she expected, so she began randomly opening the other doors on the floor to try to find a bedroom that met with her expectations. The first room she broke into was a similarly plain one, but the next one, which she opened with a flourishing roundhouse kick, was far more luxurious and well stocked with books. As she entered it, the doctor came up the stairs. He'd seen her kick the door in, although she tried to deny it. Her exceptional skills with deception convinced him that she'd just been checking the room for him. She suggested that they could swap rooms. He wasn't up for that. She asked if she could borrow some books, and he agreed just to get past the awkward situation, asking her to please not fold the edges as he began fruitlessly attempting to reassemble his door. Not knowing where the armory was, Seth wanted to start putting the key in random doors. Whilst he looked for any, I ritually cast Detect Magic and began to move around the room. I detected illusion magic around the mayor and went up and patted him down from behind. I could tell there was much more of him than there appeared to be. He mistook my investigation for some sort of amorous intent, asking if I was looking for a concealed weapon. I assured him I was merely trying to get his attention to ask the whereabouts of the armory. Whilst he'd given Seth 1 key, the other key which would be required to open it was in possession of Dave. I thanked him, then cast light on his concealed weapon and went to find Seth. The locked door to the medical bay with a "Do Not Disturb" sign did not stand in our way, as Seth expertly picked the lock. Dave didn't notice us at first, being preoccupied, having a metal rave with his glowing knee. Those pills must be really good stuff. He agreed to come with us to the armory as long as Seth gave him the 2nd key afterwards, so we waited whilst he got dressed, and then the 3 of us headed to the back of the building. Mia, meanwhile, was devouring historical books, looking for more information on the Order of the Dawn. She couldn't find that specific phrase, but she did find some things about figures in white, with a connection to all 4 guardians in the distant past. Seth and Dave opened the locks, one at each, turning the keys at the same moment, then stood patiently whilst I went through the entire armoury. I eventually took a leather armour, a wooden shield and a mace. It took me quite some time to find the things I wanted, and I need to emboss the armour with some sort of leaf and vine pattern to make it look a little more my style. In return, I left the club I had taken in the fight earlier. We then headed up to the sleeping quarters to find Mia, taking a quarterstaff for her. Passing the doctor with his broken door muttering about how it had been kicked in, I cast mending on it to help him out. In return, he gave me a 7th big-ass pill. Seth knocked on Mia's door, but Dave kicked it hard as she opened it, wanting to try the roundhouse kick the doctor had just described to him. She was flung back, landing on the floor on her back. He went up to her and cast lay on hands on her, after which she slapped him with her mage hand. I was busy striding up and down the hall, showing off my new armour, but caught my foot and tripped, sustaining 3 points of faceplant damage. We decided to turn in for the night. Seth was going to escort Dave to the infirmary. Dave decided to practice roundhouse kicks and, despite a few close calls, somehow he made it safely down the stairs. I went into my room, and there was a single white rose on the bed. I was immediately on my guard, raising my fabulous shield and new mace, looking at it suspiciously in case it attacked. I waited until I heard a knock at the door. It was Seth, and I told him to come in, but carefully, I was not alone. I stood, glaring at the rose, told him I'd got this, and wild-shaped for the first time into the most furious pom-pom you've ever seen. I had been going for an owl, and I succeeded, but unfortunately the majestic adult owl I had envisaged was beyond my powers, and instead I was an almost newly hatched chick. Seth picked me up and placed me gently on the bed next to the rose so he could take a closer look at it. My beady eyes looked at it warily. My white feathers beside it highlighted to him patches of colour showing through. It had clearly been painted. Seeing it as a warning, he picked me up and put me in his coat, and then went to Mia's room. I fluffed up and fell asleep. Seth explained to Mia what had happened with the white rose, then gave me to Mia. He told her we should sleep whilst he kept watch, spending the night with his weapons drawn, not a euphemism, looking at the locked bedroom door. Mia tucked me up in bed beside her, placing a sock over me to keep me warm whilst she went into her 4-hour trance. Approximately 45 minutes after this, my wild shape dropped. Mia found herself lying in bed next to my human form as, without waking, I just put my arms around her and snuggled up. I think I shall continue this story in the morning. Sweet dreams.